Right, let's see if I can do this. This is English, but not as you know it. What if Shakespeare had written, "To be or not to be, that is the ask thing"? Or if Luke Skywalker had been told to wield the might, Luke? How outlandish would our world be if English hadn't taken on the many words it has from other tongues? No words from Latin, French, or Greek. In this short film, let's find out. Hear all about Anglish. That's English stripped of overseas borrowings, and which I'm speaking right now. Learn how some of our most name-known speech givers have used Anglo-Saxon words to win us over, and see this world-renowned writ like you've never seen it before. Is English better without the borrowings? Let's find out in another Rob Words. So some of the words in that introduction, or foreword I should probably say, seemed a little alien to you. That's because it was written in Anglish, and thanks to my guest on this video for helping me out with it. So let's talk about Anglish. First of all, what is it? Well, the term was coined in a series of articles written by a guy called Paul Jennings in the British satirical magazine Punch back in 1966. The year is significant because that is 900 years after the Battle of Hastings in 1066, the battle that proved a turning point for the English language. The victory of French-speaking William the Conqueror and his ascent to the English throne is the trigger for a huge influx of French and indeed Latin words into the English language. Among them, all of these words that I've just used. In fact, French and Latin derived words now make up 2/3 of the words in English. Jennings' articles are written entirely in, as Punch puts it, the language we should have had if the Normans had been defeated at Hastings. That is, Anglish. The articles are written from an alternate reality where our tongue was kept free from outlandish inmingling of French and Latin-fetched words which a Norman win would, beyond ask-think, have inled into it. In that sentence alone, you can see Anglish in action. Any French or Latin-derived words have been swapped out for Anglo-Saxon alternatives, words derived from Old English. This is an alternative reality where William the Conqueror is William the Conquered, having been the recipient of an arrow to the eye at Hastings, not his opponent Harold. In Harold's England, the language of the Anglo-Saxons, Old English, develops untouched by French or Latin words. William Shakespeare ends up writing, "To be or not to be, that is the ask thing. Is it higher thinking in the brain to bear the slings and arrows of outrageous dooming, or to take weapons against a sea of bothers and by against work end them?" This is also a reality where we are skyfaring by squirt aircraft, that is, air travelling by jet planes. And there's a far clanger and farseer in every home. That's a telephone and television to you and me. And those are literal translations of those Latin/Greek derived words where clang means sound, a bit like klingen in modern German. Those articles are hilarious and they are well worth a read. I'll put a link in the description, but keep watching for now. They were written in the 1960s, but Anglish is alive and well now and thriving in the internet age. There are entire online communities of people communicating solely in Anglish, chiefly on Reddit and Discord. You can also find Anglish dictionaries, or rather word books, and even news articles written in Anglish. This is the Anglish Times. The guy behind it also runs a highly popular Discord server. So I sent him a message, or in English, a tiding, and he agreed to talk to me all about it. He asked me to keep his name and face out of this, but you don't need either to enjoy what he has to say about Anglish.
You could call it Anglo-Saxon or Old English if it was modernized. English has been around for a long time. There's people that have complained about the Latin and French influence in English for many years.
Indeed. So is there actually any value in extracting the foreign words from English?
I think the Anglo-Saxon words hit harder than the foreign replacements because you learn them at a younger age and you have more tactile associations with them. They're livelier, they hit harder, And I think that's why a lot of politicians intentionally write their speeches with mostly Anglo-Saxon vocabulary.
Really? Is that true? You bet it is. Winston Churchill, Britain's wartime Prime Minister and one of the greatest English political speakers of the 20th century, 20th hundred year, once said, "My method is simple. I like to use Anglo-Saxon words with the least number of syllables." Sorry about the voice, but what he says there does indeed bear out in some of Churchill's most famous speeches. Just have a look at this extract from an address he made to the British Parliament just after the British Army had been forced to retreat from Dunkirk, something you'll know about if you've seen the film of the same name. This is one of the most rousing rallying cries of all time, and every single word in it can be traced back to the Anglo-Saxons. Every single word in there is descended from Old English. Every single word, that is, except for one, surrender, which comes from French. So what do you think? Do Anglo-Saxon words hit harder? Do words like fight and fields and streets strike at something deep and primal within our souls in a way that battle, pasture and road couldn't? Let me know in the comments. With that in mind, let's get back to Anglish and how you actually go about writing in Anglish, like our pal at the Anglish Times does. He's going to talk us through one of his articles shortly, but to me it seems there are two essential skills here. One is to be able to spot the French, Latin or Greek-derived words that you're about to use, and the other is to then find the Germanic alternative. Remember, English is a Germanic language. Here, I think I'm at an advantage because I speak a fair bit of French and German, and one of the ways I went about learning them was to watch French and German TV. When I was back in the UK, I watched endless episodes of the French version of the Great British Bake Off, Le Meilleur Pâtissier. I was obsessed with it. To watch programmes from other countries, you need a VPN. So allow me to recommend to you NordVPN, who've also helped me out with this video. A VPN allows you to surf the web as if you're in a different country and therefore access content only available in that country. So switch to, say, Germany and you can watch German shows that aren't available where you are. Put either the English or German subtitles on and it suddenly becomes a great learning tool. A VPN also has lots of other side benefits like protecting you when you use public Wi-Fi, blocking intrusive ads, and even saving you money on travel websites that base their pricing on where you are and whether or not you've been to that site before. It is a sneaky trick and a VPN gets you round it. I know lots of people who use NordVPN for just general internet security or to circumvent restrictions on internet access in certain countries. Plus, you can use it on up to 6 devices, so you're covered everywhere basically. I have mine switched on all of the time. So to try it out, go to nordvpn.com/robwords to get the 2-year plan with an exclusive deal, plus a bonus month for free. It's also risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Give it a go. So at the English Times, how do they go about writing their articles? Well, my guest's back to tell us.
So when I started out, each one was very difficult in terms of coming up with the English words. Once I was used to using them, at that point they came more naturally, and now I just write it straight in English. I don't translate anything.
English fluency achieved. So let's have a look at one of those articles. This is what he wrote when our dear old Queen Elizabeth died. God rest her majestic soul. I thought this would be a good one to pick because most people probably know the basic details of it, don't they? Now you don't have to, but just hit pause here if you want to read it through yourself before I get him to explain some of the word choices he's made in here. I'll just give you a second. That's a second. So let's start with the very first few words. Queen Elizabeth the Other, at 96 years old, has died. Queen Elizabeth the Other?
If you go to the subreddit, there's a word book, and it says second is of Latin origin, so we don't use it. We use tooth, which is T-W-O-T-H, which is like the word two, with a T-H on the end. And so that's what I started the article with. I just wrote Queen Elizabeth the Tooth. But one of them brought up that there's an archaic usage of other as the second. And there was many examples for it where back before we started using the word second, in English, the word other meant second.
Well, that's cool. I love the way this is teaching us about our own language. In the same sentence, he refers to Balmoral Castle as Balmoral stronghold. So what's going on there?
I think a lot of the castles were built by Norman invaders who also brought the word castle. And that's kind of what English wants to undo, is all of the Norman influence. So they would definitely not want to use the word castle. They would prefer stronghold.
Makes sense. Let's keep going. Our man Winston Churchill gets a name check when he's referred to as one of 15 first Wickners during Queen Elizabeth's reign. I mean, leadership. What's the story there?
So first Wickner is kind of a replacement or substitute for prime minister. Instead of prime, you have first. Instead of minister, you have Wickner, which is like a caretaker or a keeper in Old English.
Okay, and one more. Atheling William?
Atheling William instead of prince. Prince is not an inboard English word. Atheling from Old English would be the closest substitute. Athel would be something like noble, and then the ing, making it like a small noble.
So you see how English can be compiled by using existing synonyms like first instead of prime, and resurrecting long-dead English words. Maybe you prefer some of those to the words we use now. Perhaps Atheling Harry should have written of his at-burst to Americ's land. Thanks so much to the mysterious lead writer at the English Times for talking us through that. And what he also wanted me to stress is that English is by no means fixed. It's all about finding the word that you think fits best instead of the French, Latin or Greek word that we're currently using. Actually writing in English is a really creative process, and it's kind of fun, and you're going to see my attempt at it shortly. Now, so far we have been kind of having fun with this, but the purging of English of invasive foreign words has been no laughing matter at some points in history. This idea actually predates Paul Jennings' article introducing English by many centuries. Allow me to introduce you to the Inkhorn Controversy. Now, back in the 16th and 17th centuries, there was a gushing torrent of French, Greek and Latin words flowing into the English language. They were all the rage among the Renaissance intelligentsia. So much so that entire dictionaries of them were being published with pretentious titles like Sir Thomas Eliot's Bibliotheca Eliotai. Writing was also becoming at times just ludicrous, with multisyllabic loanwords replacing simple English alternatives. I mean, just take a look at this abomination here. The which did know not only your complexion and infirmity, but also the imbecility and strength of your body, with other qualities expedient and necessary to be known. But briefly, to conclude, for your recuperating or recovering your health, I was convocated to be in the presence of His Majesty. This influx of French, Greek and Latin really irritated a sector of literary society known as the purists, who nicknamed these imported words Inkhorn terms in reference to the fact that they were mostly being brought into the language by scholars, and also maybe because they generally used up a lot more ink than their traditional counterparts. Compare the short and snappy fire with conflagration. This fun-looking fella, Sir John Cheek, made his position clear, saying, "I am of this opinion, that our own tongue should be written clean and pure, unmixed and unmangled with borrowing of other tongues." However, the purists didn't just want to keep out any new foreign words, they also wanted to throw out French-derived words that had already been in English for several centuries by this point. Sounds an awful lot like English, doesn't it? Sir John Cheek wrote his own alternative version of the Gospel according to St Matthew, where he dropped the Latinized words used in the authorized translation. So lunatic became mooned, which is what lunatic literally means. Centurion became hundreder. He turned crucified into crossed, and prophet into foresayer. Another advocate of this purist approach was a guy called Ralph Lever. In his 1573 book, The Art of Reason, rightly termed witchcraft, he argued that the word logic should be changed to the less Greek-sounding witchcraft. He also uses the word storehouses instead of categories, and argues for conclusion becoming ense, negation being nase, affirmation becoming yese, and definition becoming say what? I mean, say what? All this meant that these purist texts look every bit as ridiculous to us as the pretentious, verbose works of the neologizers, as those who were importing new words were known. In fact, the texts crammed with Latin and French are actually easier to read today because the neologizers ultimately won, didn't they? So, right at the start of this video, I promised to show you a well-known document, or writ as I called it, in a way you had never seen before. The document I was referring to is this one. If you're watching from the USA, you may well know it off by heart. It is the preamble to your Constitution. But do you think we can improve it? I mean, look at it. It's saturated with loan words. There's barely an earthy Anglo-Saxon term in there. Look what happens if I blank out all of the foreign import words. We're left with basically nothing. Is it really right that a founding document of an English-speaking superpower should rely so heavily on words forged in Italy, France and Greece? Well, don't worry. I have solved the problem for you because I have done my best to convert this landmark charter into English. Here it is. We the folk of the four-wand riches, because you can't have united or states, to make a more flawless wandship, build rightness, bring frith, a lovely old word for peace, and stillness to our land, shield one another, uphold the overall welfare, and hold fast the blessings of freedom to ourselves and our offspring, do foresay and lay down this law book for the four-wand riches of Amerik's land, aka Vinland, which is actually what the Vikings called North America. So what do you think? An improvement? Can you do better? What other famous texts can we give the English treatment? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again to the Anglish Times for their help with this video, and in particular for their help with my alternative preamble to the Constitution. If you've enjoyed this, I think you're going to really like my video about how to cheat at German. You don't need to be learning German to enjoy it. Otherwise, just let YouTube tell you which one to watch next, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.